a lot of people have been asking me, how doeth one make money in music? Before we talk about how to make money in music, how does someone make money? And first and foremost, I think something that I've learned is that money isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a very essential thing. We all require money to be able to live. You know what I'm saying? And I think when it comes to money and when it comes to music, if we're talking about a business, when you make music and you sell music, selling music, you have now declared yourself a business owner. Your business is your music. And so mediums, music is one of many mediums and forums that people are able to make money in music. The first way I would start off is to go off the highest level of value. The highest level of value for looking at number one is imagination. And I'm pretty sure you guys have heard me say this before. If you're brand new here, haven't seen me say this, welcome. I'm about to give you a major code. Right below imagination is communication. And so what's wild about this is that early on in my career, I remember being in a space where I was making these really insane sounding beats, or I had learned how to create the production for these beats. And I was posting them a lot. Okay. I was posting them a lot. This is pre-Instagram. This is Twitter and all that. Like, this is way before the Lupe fiasco thing, right? Hey, Siri, set a timer for 15 minutes.
15 minutes, starting now.
Cool. So how to make money in music, you got to go off of value first. So the highest level of value is imagination, right? And so creativity, your imagination, the things you think about, ideas, concepts, ideas, you know. And I feel like that's a separate concept for a different time, about how sometimes the ideas you receive will be the exact same idea that someone else had. You ever find those moments where that's going to be a whole nother concept, but value. And so the highest level of value is imagination. And the tier below that is communication. Because if you can communicate that imagination, what I have gathered is that people will pay for that idea that you gave them. They'll pay you for it. And so I talked about this a while back about skills, honing your abilities, and not only allowing your abilities to be able to make a space for you, but leveraging your abilities to be able to allow people to support you with that. And so if I were to put my story into this, originally, I would post a lot of beats early on. And when I post those beats, a lot of the beats that I posted, I often would think that the more wilder and creative people would not want to listen to that. And I actually didn't realize I did it for years, from 2013 up until about 2015. There was a 3-year span where I was uploading a lot of music and did not know what that music was doing. Didn't realize that same exact amount of music was garnishing people who actually liked it. And so I had this unique way of communicating how I felt through sounds. And so my whole branding came from creating sounds to convey my feelings, and that those feelings turned into music. You can go back to my SoundCloud and peep game on that. So I dropped albums, I had dropped music, and despite releasing music, I was not in a space where I was making a good amount of coin from it. And so little by little, I started taking these little jobs where I was, working as a catering specialist for a restaurant. I was a catering specialist for roughly a year until they let me go. And when they let me go, one of the things about being a catering specialist that they taught me was that you have to be able to develop relationships with people. You have to be able to develop relationships with people in order to get orders. You know what I'm saying? But it's not necessarily to get orders, but you have to establish connection with people so you can help them. And so the one way that they required us to do that is we had to do these really unique calls. We had to do these really unique cold calls and just call up people, see how they responded. If they didn't respond, go and visit them, go and check back all the people that previously ordered with us and just check back in with those people, right? And so in my mind, I'm working as a catering specialist, and I did not think at that moment or at that time that those skills would be applicable to music. Okay, so keep this at the forefront of your mind. I remember the day I got let go, I figured out I needed to figure out a way to make $1. And the first thought I thought was, aren't there apps on Instagram, or like are there like, is there like an app where I can make $1 right now? And at that time, Uber Eats was popping. Okay, Uber was popping. Postmates, anybody does Postmates, anybody does Uber, part of the chat, anybody do those apps? There was one that I like to call called Roadie. Roadie was a crazy one. Roadie was hilarious because it would randomly give you these random spaces where you would have to go miles, and I mean miles away, to go pick up luggage for Delta. So let's say Delta had luggage for people and they got back to their house. Roadie had a thing where if someone flew and they wanted to get their luggage delivered to their house, Roadie would have people pick up the luggage and they drop off the luggage at the crib. And how much ever that was, and if they allowed you to, do that gig, they'll pay you for it. So it'd be like $25 a delivery luggage. And depending on however long you drove to get there, they pay you for that distance. At this time, I was doing Uber Eats, I was doing Postmates, and I did a little bit of the roadie stuff, but it was really killing my like mileage and my gas. So I could not do that for longer than 3 years after that. I think it was like 2 years I did that straight. The pandemic comes and I'm terrified because when the pandemic came, a lot of work, a lot of jobs shut down, no money. Okay. I ended up moving back home with my parents. So you can only fathom that I was originally working as a catering specialist. I learned how to communicate. I learned how to communicate with people, and I knew how to create from whatever situation I had. And so because of those things and those increments, I learned very early on that the way that you can make money really depends on the value that that you offer people. And so I only allowed myself at that time to offer the value of my time to people that I often communicated with. Mede said, how many hours of the day that allowed you to have for yourself? I treated it like a normal 9 to 5, and then anything outside of that was my time to do whatever. So I at that time, I didn't have time. Okay. I didn't have free time to do what I wanted to do, but I felt like there was something far greater that I was working towards. And so my whole thought process at that time was that if only I could have enough money, I would be able to do music full time, right? And I think this is often one of the biggest things that I always hear from everybody that works on music or they want to work on music. If I just had enough money or enough time, if I just had enough money or enough time, I'll be able to do what I wanted to do. That is a mindset. But might I suggest to you a different way of thinking? Now, maybe at this time I was a little bit psychotic to think that all I needed was a little bit of momentum, and I could use that momentum to be able to put me in a space that was going to allow me to do what I wanted to do. A thought process that I had at this time, back in 2018, something I always, and it was so unique when I learned this and discovered this, but I always felt that if I did what I was supposed to do, the world that I know will take care of me. Almost like if I take care of the world that I have around me, then the world will take care of me back. So it's like and I'm not doing it so I can get taken care of, but I'm doing it so I can serve, because the universal code is a serve. So back to the thing I was mentioning. I was under the impression that the more money would allow me to be able to have more options to be able to do things. I'll never forget, the year was 2017, and I was still working that job as a catering specialist. And I got the call from Sango to go on tour with him. Of course, I was excited. I was losing my mind. But I knew that something mentally was going to change for me the moment that I went on the first show, played the first show, went to bed, and I remember waking up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, because in my mind, I'm used to waking up early in the morning. I'm used to waking up early, going to a job that I really didn't care about. But I knew at that time I had no other alternative but to take that job and serve it in a way that was like the job I wanted to have. So the job I wanted to have was like, I wanted to make music full time. So even though like I couldn't think, or I couldn't experience the same amount of like freedom, me working that job, that catering specialist job, I was going to treat it the same way I did once I do get that opportunity. Now, here's the kicker, y'all. I want y'all to peep game on this. My mind started to shift a little bit from the way that I had been taught that money works. And so right after that show, I remember I got paid. I got paid for the show. And looking at this one day, I was like, this is way more than anything I received within 2 to 3 weeks. And I looked at it and I was like, I got this from playing one show and I had 14 more left to play. I get up, I put on my clothes, put my backpack, check my laptop. I check out of the hotel that, Sango had me in. And I remember it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm like kind of waiting on the guys. I'm like, where's everybody? No one's down in the lobby. And I had already checked out of the room. I texted Sango and I was like, where y'all at? And you know what he said? He was like, oh, dog, we still asleep. I was still knocked out. We don't have to head out till like 10. And at that moment, I realized I didn't have to get up that early. I really didn't. And the reason was because what that thought, the thought of playing a show and then waking up, not realizing you don't have to get up early like beforehand. I had a whole mental shift where it was like, how can I do this more? How can I do this more? And so I had to go through years of figuring out why is it whenever I go and play a gig or play a show that I get paid infinitely more than like working a normal job. And the reason was because for a period of time, even the thought of how Sango had me on tour, there was a level of creativity and imagination that I mastered. And I didn't realize I mastered it. I really didn't realize I mastered it until I was on tour with him. And I met K Tronada in person, and he kept talking about how like the beats that we were making were like inspiring for him. He's played my remixes before in his shows, and I was like, how is that the case? How is it the case? And it ultimately comes down to this thought, and it was actually a scripture, okay? So the scripture was this, Proverbs 18:16-17, and it says, in quote, a man's gift maketh room for him and bringeth him before great men. He that is first in his own cause seemeth just, but his neighbor cometh and searcheth him. So you mean to tell me the gift that I spent hours and hours and hours on perfecting made room, and not just made room, it will put you in a room. So how to be able to make money within music, there's a lot of technical ways you could do it, but the actual way of doing it is when you hone your craft, when you hone your ability, you will not believe the people who are currently watching what you're doing right now. Because the gift that you have, the thing that you work on, the beats that you make, and you continue to keep working on your craft and getting better, that gift will then make a room for you. and not just make a room. You will look around one day and realize you're in the room with the people that you wanted to be around. And I realized that is a value. And if you consistently do that enough, it'll pay for things. I say all this to say the value, the highest level of value is imagination. When you sit down at your computer and cook up a beat and you communicate through drums, through chords, through all the little sound designing stuff, that is a gift, bro. A thing given willingly to someone without payment, a present. Give something as a gift, especially formal, or donation as a bequest. But it's a natural ability or talent or a thing that you naturally gravitate to. And let's even look up talent. I'm a little bit curious too. Let me look up talent. And I'm about to look up ability, natural aptitude or skill. Okay. So it's crazy. It's really crazy to realize that honing your craft will make room. It actually does make room. It not only makes room, but it makes a room. And you're going to look around and all the rooms look very much like what you wanted. Okay. So the one thing that this stream is, we empower one another. Matter of fact, I will definitely say the reason why I bring up Katra is because of the fact that he is an example. He is an example of someone who you empower. If you empower your friends long enough, they not only will get a whiff of that inspiration, but when you dip, they're going to think you could do it. And I want everybody who's watching this to believe they can do it too.